Hey guys, Tom Barclay here at Tottenham's training ground. Just done Ange Postecoglou's press conference previewing the Brentford game on Sunday. Feels like it wasn't long ago that the Hotspur game happened last night. Obviously a great win, 3-0. Goals from all three academy players. If you haven't seen my video from that, check it out last night. I did that on the way back. Unfortunately I did it on the train or near the train, so apologies for the sound on that one. I probably won't do that in the future, but I was slightly worried about getting stuck up in London, having needed to get home and also get to here the next day, so that was the reason for it. But maybe next time I won't choose to do that. But anyway, here today at Spurs, and ahead of another big game, Brentford, trying to sort out this awful league form that they've had so far this season, but obviously taking the positives from the Hotspur victory into this game. But I suppose the first place to start is a big question mark over the fitness of Radu Dragusin. Unfortunately, at this stage, we still don't know. Ange said he's not sure, needs to let it settle down and get some information over the weekend. But right now, he's not available for the weekend against Brentford, at least at the moment. I think it's very unlikely that he'll be past fit for that. And it's hard to tell if it's long-term or not. It's a knee injury, so they're obviously kind of worrying about it. I'm going to have to try and find out, which would be a big blow. I know Radu Dragusin might not be everyone's favourite player, but he's played a lot of games recently, missing him, particularly in the lead up to that Liverpool game, where I think Dragusin's best games generally for Spurs have been when Spurs have kind of had their backs up against the wall, kind of not the style of football that Postecoglou loves to play. If anything, I'm still yet to be convinced that Radu really fits what Ange likes to have from his centre-backs in an ideal scenario. But when the team are sort of having to really dig in and be backs against the wall, like we saw against Man City, Dragusin really comes to the fore, I suppose, with his attributes. So to miss him for any length of time would be a blow, given how short they are at the back. And there was a funny line from Ange, which you might have seen from the broadcast. Obviously, this is all from the open section of the press conference. May do a video later on the embargo section, where he said every time he feels like he's seeing light at the end of the tunnel regarding injuries, it turns out to be an oncoming train coming straight at him. And that's what it must feel like at the moment, because it's a one in, one out policy right now. Every time someone comes back, like a Mickey van der Ven, then Radu Dragusin gets injured. And you've got to feel for Ange on that front, because he tried to protect Dragusin. It wasn't like he's obviously played a lot of games, but he didn't start him from the beginning at Hotspur. He brought him on at half time, and within 20 minutes or less so, he kind of gets a sort of freak injury with his knee. It's not like it's not like a hamstring being picked up, which is often the type of muscle injury that Ange gets accused of being sort of contributing factor to. So you really do feel for him on that front. And on that note, he was actually asked whether the situation regarding Dragusin could lead Spurs to have a look around at a centre back before Monday's deadline. Obviously, the focus has mainly been on an attacker. First it was Muani, now it's Matthias Tell. But from the beginning of the transfer window, there was talk of Spurs looking at centre backs, and Ange actually said it obviously depends on the extent of Dragusin's injury, but it might be an area that we do need to look at, and they'll explore options over the weekend. So that is one to watch, really. Another player they might be looking to bring in, but and the fact that Romero, which is another sort of downer from the injury front, and there is some positive news coming, so I'll come on to that in a second, but let's deal with the sort of negatives at the moment. Romero, who I think was back training a little while ago, but then the other day when the open training session, he was back in the gym, and it feels like, Ange didn't say it was a setback, but he said he was a slow healer. They're taking him on a week-to-week basis, and because it's been out for such a long time, they're taking their time, but it's a tricky one, he said, and they're just not sure yet. Still work he needs to do. So it seems to be a bit unsure, timeline-wise, when he will return from injury, which is, it's great to have Van der Ven back, he's key, but Romero is sort of partner in crime at the back, is absolutely essential as well. So that is a worry. You'd have to think that is a worry, how long it's taking. Maybe he'll pop up in a week's time and it will all be fine, but it's a frustrating one, because it feels like it's really dragging on, that Romero situation. And looking back now at that Chelsea game where he brought back Van der Ven and Romero, and I'm sure he'd make his case, Postecoglou, over why he did that. But unfortunately, the way it's worked out, it's looking like maybe he was rushed back too soon. Or, I don't know. It's either way, whatever happened, he got injured again in that game, and he's been out for ages since. That was December the 8th, was it? Something around that time. And we're now last day of January here, going into February, and it's still unclear exactly when Romero will be back. So, with that in mind, it's maybe not a surprise with the Dragusin situation that they might be looking at a centre-back. So we'll wait to see on that front. But on to some good news, I suppose. Not immediate good news, because only Jed Spence is ready to come back into the team out of the recently injured players. Obviously, he was ineligible for the game against Elfsborg, but he is fit. Apparently, Reguilon's got a chance as well. He also was ineligible for the Elfsborg game. Reguilon, you wouldn't think would start anyway. Against what was his old club, loaned to Brentford last season, wasn't he? I actually thought he was very good at Brentford last season. Slightly surprised they didn't sign him permanently or didn't lead to a permanent move elsewhere. But either way, he's still at the club and he's got a chance of playing. But after that, that's it for now. Obviously, Kinski comes back in as well, having been ineligible as well for the Elfsborg game. But regarding the other injured players, there's a whole raft of them that are apparently 7 to 10 days away. They include Vicario, who's been training for a while, was training the other day, so that's huge. And he's probably ahead of schedule, you'd guess, really. Brennan Johnson, Destiny Udogie, who seems to be on track for where he's supposed to be. Wilson Odobert, who's been, the missing man for so much time since he signed here because of injury. I mean, you've got to think with someone like that, even if he's back fit, unlikely to get thrown straight back in because he's had so much time on the sidelines. But still, good news on that front. Timo Werner, James Maddison, all 7 to 10 days away. Dominic Solanke apparently about a week behind on that one. But that, again, even by my sort of estimation, that's probably slightly ahead of schedule. Looking at what he said 6 weeks originally, it was looking like sort of March the 1st, potentially for that Man City game. But if he's a week behind the sort of 7 to 10 days, then maybe even before that. So that's really good news on that front. They're 7 to 10 days away. I mean, look, it's now Friday. The big game of the season is Liverpool away next Thursday, and you've got to wonder if any of them will make it back in time. But that's one to definitely watch on that front. One man who they'll hope to be sort of front and centre for that game against Liverpool is Mickey van der Ven. Obviously made his comeback against Elfsborg, got half a game there, felt fine, went really, really well after he himself getting injured with a hamstring injury back on that Chelsea game, I think December the 8th, if I got it right. Ange said he's probably not going to be in line for 90 minutes against Brentford, which you might remember was his debut and Ange's first game, and I'll come on to that in a bit. All those 17, 18 months ago. But he is not 90 minutes because of the short turnaround from the Elfsborg game, but you get the sense that he's really been sort of geared towards that Liverpool game and getting really ready for that fitness battle. But you'd expect him to start and maybe get a bit more time than he would have done than in the 45 minutes he got against Elfsborg. And Ange said, his return, such a key player, gave the whole group a lift, and he's just planning on sort of trying to build up his minutes. So good to see that happen. The kids that were involved last time, obviously, I don't know if I'm even counting Mikey Moore. He's obviously the youngest of the lot at 17, but he's basically a first-team player now. So I'm more talking about you like Dane Scarlett, who obviously made such an impact when scoring the other day, and along with Demola Ajayi as well, who obviously scored his goal. What a wonderful night that was for the academy. They'll likely be involved again on the bench. How much, if they'll get game time or not, we don't know. But given the injury situation, I imagine there'll be another big tick in the box of the academy regarding representation, I suppose, for the Brentford game. And I suppose on just one final point on young players, I get the sense, I'm told, that Will Lancashire's likely to go out on loan, maybe even today, Friday. I know Cardiff are really keen, but there are other teams involved. It really does. The crux of it is where he will get the most game time. That's the point for Will right now, is to give him as much possibility as possible to develop. Having played a few games and obviously scored against Galatasaray, but of late, particularly with Scarlett coming back now, the sort of onus really is in him getting regular first team experience in men's football. So that's one to watch. Ange obviously talking about the league form, how the need to rectify it because it is horrendous. They are, despite that positive win against Elfsborg, sort of changing the mood a little bit. 1 win in 11, I think it is. That win being against Southampton, it is horrendous. They are only 8 points from the relegation zone, 24 points from 23 games. I'm not going to go right through it over and over again, but the fact of the matter is they are under threat of being sucked into a relegation battle. and it is hard to see exactly where the next win's coming from in the league, albeit with that raft of players coming back. Hopefully that should turn it around. I mean, Brentford, let's move on to them because they're the opposition this weekend, away at Brentford, which is much worse than playing them at home this season, because Brentford seem to be one of those teams that can't do anything away from home, but are basically unbeatable at times at home. So it's a real challenge. They've got some excellent players, the likes of obviously Brian Mbumu is the key man, but they've got a lot of other good players too. And Ange was quite interesting talking about Brentford and their qualities as a club, not just Thomas Frank, but as a club. And he was praising them for having a clear plan and identity, being well run. And he mentioned that other clubs who are sort of understanding that too now, the idea of coming up with a plan and basically sticking to it and seeing the course, I think was his phrase, which is an interesting one because that's kind of where, on the face of it, it looks like Tottenham want to be at now. They also seem to be going down the sort of data-driven role that a lot of clubs have done. Brighton being a key example of that, but it feels like Brentford for a long time have been the sort of market or the sort of pioneers on that front in English football. And it does feel like Tottenham right now, so far, with the backing of Ange, are trying to stick to a plan. Let's see how long it lasts if things get worse. But maybe they are taking a leaf out of Brentford's book, which for Brentford, given it wasn't that long ago that I was covering them in League One, are now sort of a staple of the Premier League and seem to be able to sell some of their best players and still do really well. So that is pretty impressive. As I mentioned, Brentford away was Ange's first competitive game for Spurs. It was about 17, 18 months ago. He said it felt like 17, 18 years. So much has happened since. He remembers that game. He remember the water being shut off, which I've never seen before in a Premier League game or any match anywhere, and that sort of delayed the kickoff, I think. But also we had the situation regarding Romero. He obviously scored and then he got concussed, had to go off. Remember Emerson Royale scored a wonderful goal. Remember him, not really known for his excellent sort of wonder goals, but it was one that day. And a 2-2 draw, which was hard fought and full of incident and a real setting the tone of what was to come, to be honest, from Postecoglou's side and his football. And he himself said, looking back on particularly Romero getting concussed in that game, how it sort of was almost an early sign that there wasn't going to be smooth sailing coming up, and that's certainly been the case for Postecoglou during his time here. He was giving nothing away pretty much on transfers, apart from that admission that they could maybe look at a centre-back, which was quite a big admission, to be fair. That was definitely newsworthy from a journalist point of view. I found that very interesting. He was asked specifically about Matthias Tell again, and he gave nothing away on that one. He said they'll be exploring stuff between now and the end of the window. So, just looking at team lineup, lastly, we've got, obviously, I presume Kinski comes back in. Vicario not quite there yet. Austin's done well in Europe of late, but Kinski is the man, surely, at this point. I am wondering about fullbacks, because Spence, I presume, comes back into the team, mainly to give players a rest. I'm going to go left back, but it would not surprise, and start Porro, but I would not be surprised if Porro got a break, particularly with Liverpool being on the horizon. So so I'm going to leave leave Davis on the bench here, but would not shock me to have Spence at right back, Davis at left back, Gray and Van der Ven in the middle. But I'm going to go on here, Porro, Gray, Van der Ven, Spence. But let's see on that one. Midfield-wise, I think Sarr came off. I don't think he'll start. So I'm going to go Bissouma, Bergvall, Bentancur. Can't think of any other obvious candidates after that. So those would be the three that I would pick. And then probably Kulusevski, Richarlison's son. Mikey Moore obviously making a very a big case for his inclusion of that performance the other day. But he also looked quite knackered after the match, having put in such a shift. So I would have thought maybe off the bench instead. And to be honest, Sonny, as I said in my reaction video, which you can check out again after the game, I thought that was one of his best games for a while. He seems to be on a bit of an upward trajectory form-wise. In the last 3 games, he's played better, looked really sharp against Elfsborg. So it's hopefully and he obviously only played 45 minutes, so hopefully he can kick on from there. And Richarlison, I actually thought was pretty quiet against Elfsborg. Actually, he's got 2 goals in his last couple of games in the Premier League. And say what you want about Richarlison and his injury record, but actually when he has played, and that's been the big question mark around him, he's actually been pretty effective for Postecoglou. So he'll be in sort of hunting around for more goals, obviously, against Brentford, who are a big challenge, but another big opportunity, which seems to be sort of constant framing of these matches going into them, whether it be in the league or the cups. but an opportunity to change the narrative around Spurs. But based on the league form, I think a draw away to them wouldn't be a bad result. Like in his first ever game, they can get a victory that really can, if not put to bed relegation chat, then they're a big factor in sort of moving away from it. And they can sort of look ahead to this massive week, with transfer deadline, Liverpool, Villa, and hopefully it can be onwards and upwards. I mean, there's still fans out there, understandably so, given the league form, who are questioning the manager and his position, and almost surprised given Daniel Levy's history regarding sacking managers, why Postecoglou is still in position. If you're wondering about that, which I'm sure all Spurs fans are, I did do a video a couple of days ago, sort of citing 8 reasons why I think, from speaking to people and getting a feel for it, why Daniel Levy has stuck with Postecoglou so far during this difficult season. So go and check that out. And fingers crossed from his perspective and the club all round that they can get a victory at Brentford, start to change the narrative, and with these players coming back, there can be some actual light at the end of the tunnel, which doesn't end up being a train bearing down on Postecoglou and the rest of the team. Anyway, I'll speak to you guys. Maybe I'll do an embargo video actually, so I'll maybe speak to you later. If not, I'll speak to you after the Brentford game. Cheers, guys.